Hello and welcome. In this video, I will share with you the perfect recipe for making layers in Evony. If you haven't watched my previous mechanics videos, I recommend doing that first. Some of this will be a review, but I will go into much more detail on how layers work and what you need to consider when making your layers. I will go over attacking layers, protective layers, what layers are needed, and the most important question: does size matter? Attacking layers are the layers in your march that are mainly buffed by your general. For example, Minamoto buffs ranged. Ranged units will be your attacking layers. All other units are for protecting your attacking layers. Protective layers' main purpose is to waste the turns of the enemy forces before they can target your attacking layers. Mounted layers will soak up arrows from the enemy archers, ground will distract the enemy's mounted, and siege will be fodder for enemy siege. The most common approach in making a march preset is to have around 3 to 4 attacking layers. Let's say tier 14 through tier 12 of various percents, and maybe some leftover in tier 11. And then a nice round number of 1,000, 5,000, or even 10,000 in protective layers. You can get a nice simple cookie cutter march guide from Genghis or Akiyasha, you can call him Aka. Those guides are built for much more experienced players than me and do rather well. There is no such thing as perfect layers, as it will depend on your enemy's troop composition and buffs involved in the battle. One of the most important concepts to understand in making layers is troop priority. Enemy units will generally target the highest tier troops you have alive based on their type. Different units prioritize different troops. Now, this isn't technically 100% true. Like, ranged troops will target the mounted unit with the highest attack value, not necessarily the highest tier. So like in a rally or reinforcement, you can see ranged units attacking lower tier troops with high flat refines before targeting high tier troops. But that's a bit more in depth than is needed in this. It's just easier to think top tier and working your way down. So why are layers so important? If you have two mounted marchers, for instance, attacking each other, one with layers of only 5 troops each and one without layers, the one with layers will waste several turns attacking the 5 troop ground layers, while the other one with layers will get to attack the enemy mounted directly. So let's go over how a battle works using a typical ranged march as an example. Since siege, target siege, and then ranged, your siege layers are protecting your archers from being targeted by enemy siege. Enemy archers will target your mounted and then your archers, and ground and mounted will need to get through your ground and generally your mounted troops to get to your archers as well. When the battle starts, your archers will target ground troops first, as mounted troops are not yet in range. This is assuming that you have at least a level 2 ranged skill book. After this, they will target mounted troops only until all the enemy mounted troops are defeated. The purpose of having multiple attacking layers is not because it's more powerful, but because it helps you get rid of the enemy's small layers more quickly. If you only used tier 14 archers, it would take you a minimum of 14 turns to kill through the enemy's 14 layers of mounted troops. They could have layers of only 10 troops each, and you'd use 14 turns to defeat only 140 troops. This is why having multiple attacking layers is generally better. It is not necessarily better against bigger keeps that you don't plan on zeroing in one hit. If the enemy has 2 million troops in every layer mounted, you might be better off just only sending tier 14 ranged with minimal archer layers in the tiers below. Before I knew the mechanics well, I decided to make a siege range march with Guangetta the Great and Matthias. I figured since so many generals buff siege and range, the game must be telling us something. And the results were mixed. The dual type was great against weak players, as I would barely suffer any wounds, and it would also works great on barbs. However, when attacking players that are my size and up, it wouldn't be so optimal. When I was so much stronger than the enemy, my siege would easily kill off their siege and their archers, as my range would take care of their mounted and ground. However, when I faced a bigger opponent who had stronger troops, a more focused approach would have been better. This is the same concept with attacking layers. I see players who have marches with many troops all the way down their attacking layer unit type, and theoretically, it could help you eat through layers more quickly. However, it is also making you weaker against stronger opponents. Your tier 1s, tier 2s, all the way up to your tier 9s and tier 10s are not going to do that much at all. Remember, they will also be attacking the enemy's highest tier mounted troop. So that brings us to the most important question. Does size matter? Well, yes and no. When using attacking layers, we know that you can trade attacking power for efficiency in removing enemy layers. The best size of attacking layers will largely depend on your enemy's troop composition. As for protective layers, I would recommend not going below 20 troops. Only one troop is needed to waste the enemy's turn. However, due to counterattack mechanics, you could lose that troop before it is ever attacked. 10 troops would probably be the most efficient, but I'm saying 20 to be safe. Now that doesn't mean that you should use 20 troops in every layer. The problem with using small layers is that the enemy could easily burn through them with their low tier troops as well. However, it is better than wasting 1,000 or 5,000 troops in every layer that the enemy is going to one-shot anyway. So what do I recommend? For marches, I would suggest layering your attacking marches depending on the enemy you plan on facing. The 3 attacking layer strategy is probably a good middle ground. If you just unlocked a new tier and don't have many troops, you can use that as an additional protective layer. As for your protective layers, you can use only 20 troops of range, mounted, and siege. However, for ground, you may want to make that layer more fat, at least for your highest tier. When the battle begins, your ground units will typically be targeted by the enemy's siege, at least tier 10 and below, depending on their range buffs. Then they are attacked by all the layers of the enemy's ground and eventually the enemy's mounted. Siege and ground have very low attack, and your ground units have very high defense and HP. Not to mention, siege damage is heavily reduced versus ground because of its troop modifier. Depending on the enemy you are facing, a fat ground layer will help allow your protective layers to survive a bit longer. They won't look like they did much in your battle report, but that is because we mostly focus on kills. If you want to know what the right ground size is for you, you can use my battle formula from the previous videos, or you can play with various battle simulators that I'm sharing in the description below. I'm still working on these battle simulators, so I will try to post better versions as I do more testing. I just need to improve my Excel skills a little bit. However, a friend from Discord, K12, coded up a battle simulator on a friendly user interface for anyone to simulate battles for their own testing. As for a ground march, your protective layers should always be a minimum. Let them soak up one attack and die. Ground units have the most defense and HP, and they will tank damage much more efficiently than any other troop. When it comes to siege, different siege will attack different troops depending on their range buffs. Typically, Tier 9 will target archers and then eventually siege, while Tier 11 will target Tier 4 siege and below first, and then higher tier siege once they're in range. I believe the reason for this is because Tier 1 and Tier 4 siege range is so low, they need to move closer to the enemy, while the other siege can just sit back and shoot. Okay, so let's talk about mixed layers. Mixed layers work when you're trying to minimize your losses on a weaker opponent. The reason why we typically don't use mixed layers is because it's more efficient to design your general and their equipment refinements to strengthen only one troop type. However, this is not true when it comes to mixed rallies. Every rally doesn't need to only be ranged or only be ground. You can send different march types in a rally. A strong ground march may hold off the enemy vanguard while giving the range rally more time to take out the enemy's troops. The ground troop player may unfortunately not benefit for having a few kills, however, overall the rally would perform better. Keep this in mind when you make a strategy for your team. And an alternate use of layers is you can, for example, minimize wounds you suffer on an empty keeps archer tower by sending small layers of mounted troops, let's say 1 to 5 each. The archer tower prioritizes mounted troops and will only target them. I do this in Battlefield often by sending tier 3, 1 tier 2, and several tier 1s at a ghosted enemy. I will do this repeatedly while they sit there and wonder what's going on until they realize that all their tier 7 and tier 6 traps are being destroyed by my tier 1s. I know, I'm a monster. I need to give a special thanks to Aptoide for sponsoring my content. Aptoide is a leading App Store competitor with over 1 million users and now can save you over 20% on your purchases in Evony. You can gain an additional 5% in savings when you use my code, REDWiFi. Yeah, REDWiFi. Not only that, but I will personally give free coaching to anyone who uses Aptoide for their Evony purchases. It's as easy as downloading Evony either from the Aptoide App Store or directly from the link below, and then using the Appcoins Wallet to make your purchases. I am making a video now to demonstrate just how easy it is, but I encourage everyone to make the switch. Alexa, what's today's date?
Today is Wednesday, January 11th.